Joining me now is one of those Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporters for the New York Times, Suzanne Craig. You have been on TV much more than I have this week, which is a feat.
Oh, boy.
Again, congratulations on the reporting that you did, because sometimes good reporting actually influences things in the end. And this is one of those cases. And part of it is that it's complex. The reporting you did into Donald Trump's finances and business practices back then was deeply complicated, such that it took up tens of thousands of words in the New York Times to tell that story properly.
It took us years when I look back at it. It's interesting. I'm glad you started with the point about he initially had promised to release his tax returns, because I think about that a lot. And I think if he had just released one or two of his tax returns, I don't think it would have set a lot of this off. I know we probably wouldn't have embarked on what we did, which turned out just because we kept finding new stuff. A years-long investigation.
You were looking for an answer to a simple question.
We were looking for just kind of the state of play of his finances. If we got his tax returns, great. But we were just trying to get a better understanding of things, and we kept digging and digging and digging because he wouldn't release his tax returns initially. I think about that so often, because I wonder how history would have changed, at least in my life, if he had. I think it would have been a lot different.
Because there's nothing weird in the journalism of that. We are accustomed to the fact that in modern history, presidents give you some state of some sense of their financial affairs.
Right, and it's an important thing when you're in the White House, because you just want to know the influences that are on the person in the White House who's making decisions about so many things, including economy, world affairs. You want to understand what pressures are on that individual. So it starts out, like most things in journalism, with a simple question, and we started digging, and it ended up that we did a piece in 2018, the one that won the Pulitzer Prize, that looked at the inherited wealth of Donald Trump. And that was important because he had run for office saying, "I'm a self-made billionaire." It was central to it. And he said, "I got a $1 million loan from my father, who had a tiny, beautiful company in the outer boroughs."
Right.
And in fact, he did have a company in the outer boroughs worth a lot more than Donald Trump said, and he got a lot more money from his father, and he inherited money, and through the way what he got was enhanced by tax fraud. And then we kept looking for the tax returns, because those are just another piece of it. They're not everything with somebody's finances, but they're important. We kept looking for it, and in 2020, we managed to get decades of his corporate and personal tax returns, which revealed that pretty much all of his businesses lose money, and he is putting money, tens of millions of dollars into many of them just to keep them going.
Back in 2018, when you and I first talked about this particular issue, and we go back many, many years as financial journalists, one of the things we discussed in that first discussion after the publication was that other companies do this. Some of this is standard practice, and that's something that Donald Trump's lawyers were trying to get this court to accept. That may be wrong, may be illegal, but it happens. You had an interesting answer to that yesterday.
Right. Well, first of all, just because everybody does it, it doesn't mean that it's legal. That, to me, would be a confession in a court. So I think that's one thing. But I think there's two things. There's a lot of discussion about the valuations, and that there's a lot of games played with valuations, and nobody is ever, brought to justice on that. On that point, Donald Trump went way beyond.
Yeah, that's right. These are not a 5% higher valuation.
But the case wasn't just about that. He was actually misrepresenting things like his cash on hand to banks. He was doing so much more. And I think it's important that people understand that the valuation game, and we've written a lot about it, and I think people think about it when they think about Donald Trump, because everybody talks about the triplex and in Trump Tower, his condo, that he inflated the square footage, that sort of thing. Those sort of games that he was doing was just part of this case.
Right.
It was much larger.
Right. In some cases, he used the square footage of an elevator, which you don't do. But that would be not considered the...
Right. And then just misrepresented things like I mentioned the cash, which is hugely important when you're a bank and you're looking to lend.
Donald Trump thinks the venue had something to do with his being convicted, the biases of the judge, the biases of the attorney general. Now, obviously, we've all heard these kinds of stories before. Everybody who gets convicted thinks somebody was out to get them.
And we hear it from Donald Trump in every venue he's in.
And he's going to be, he will appeal, and it might be 2 appeals, and that might take over a year. But there are also some other things going on. This is being redirected to the IRS, which has never met an audit or a investigation they don't like, and being sent again possibly to the Manhattan, to the federal authorities.
Right. On the IRS point, are you referring to the audit that
Yeah.
that Times has reported on? The audit is another issue that's not talked about a lot. We reported it in the story in 2020 when we got his tax returns. We could see in that information that we got, there was a lot of data that there was an audit going on. And we determined just on that one audit, it's been going on for years,
Right.
that he could face a penalty in excess of $100 million. And I would imagine it's growing every day with interest. That audit is going on inside the IRS. We have no visibility into it. We don't believe it's been settled, but we don't know.
Right.
But that is another pressure that is potentially on him. That's a real issue, and added on top of the other ones. You know, the civil judgment that we saw yesterday, the E. Jean Carroll penalties that he's going to have to pay. These are huge. And they're not things that you can just put off for another day.
So if you're playing with this on your calculator, you're above $500 million at this point.
Right, and I'm always careful to say, too, with this, there's a lot that we don't know. I try to tell people what I do know, but there could be other things we just don't know about. Like he's got, I just was thinking this morning, you know, we talk about, you know, he sold a few assets, and one of them that is mentioned a lot is the old post office hotel.
Yeah.
He owns the license to that. He got $139 million for that. Well, he has to cut potentially a tax bill for that.
Right.
And we saw in court filings he was sending tax payments out. So there's things like that. There
Right.
could be other things we just don't know about.
This is still just the tip of the iceberg. Thanks for your amazing reporting for years and years and years, Suzanne. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, too. It's
Always a pleasure.
great
Suzanne
discussion.
Craig is a Pulitzer Prize winning investigative reporter for the New York Times. We're going to continue this conversation right